And now off to the second root talk in the first session today. And we are very happy to have Ronen Geisler. He is the creator of English Funcast. And yeah, I guess as the name suggests or tells us already, it's about learning English in a podcasting format, but with fun. And yeah, Ronen is going to tell us more about the connection of or the benefits of podcasting for language learners, and then the fun element and what it brings to the table. Okay, Ronen, I give it over to you, and yeah, give it a go.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Kristen. It's an honor. I'm happy to be part of this conference. So I'm Ronen Geisler. About a year ago, I started a podcast. It's called the English Funcast. I'm a Canadian certified teacher. I specialize in ESL. I taught in China for about 3 years on and off. And also in my part-time, I do stand-up comedy. I'm a stand-up comedian. So what I decided to do is I decided to do a podcast where you would learn English through jokes. What I noticed is that when I would teach a class English, I'd get a lot of stares and I'd get a lot of nods, and like you'd explain something and people go, yeah, oh. Well, were they really getting what I was saying? Were they really understanding? Because a lot of people just go and nod, like, yeah. Oh. But I realized that if you tell people jokes, and if they actually laugh at the jokes, that means that the joke processed in their mind, and they actually understood what you were saying. So what I did was I created a podcast where I would speak and I'd tell jokes, and if you laugh, that means you actually understand the words or the language or the different meanings in the joke. And so I've been doing that for the past year, and I find it to be very helpful. So I actually have a joke. Let's do an example of a joke, and let's see if I can get you guys to laugh. So this is a joke that I would use in regards to teach an idiom. So I think this is an excellent example. So what I do in the podcast, is much like what I'm going to do right now, is I read a joke, and then I'd explain the meaning behind the joke. So here we go. So a married couple were asleep when the phone rang at 2 a.m. The wife picked up the phone, listened a moment, and said, "How should I know? That's 200 miles from here," and hung up. The husband said, "Who was that?" The wife said, "I don't know. Some woman wanting to know if the coast is clear." All right. Well, I hope you guys got that. All right. So that joke pretty much would teach the idiom, the coast is clear, right? So some people wonder, what does it mean if the coast is clear? So coast is something that's near the beach. Also, you would say, is the coast clear in regards to danger? If there's some danger, if you want to go somewhere, you ask if the coast is clear. Apparently, it was the guy's lover, and the coast wasn't clear because he was sleeping with his wife at the moment. So a way that I got into podcasting, it's when I was doing stand-up comedy, I noticed that a lot of comedians, they started doing podcasts. And I was wondering why they were...
Ronen, let me just quickly interrupt you here because...
Was I muted?
Yes.
Oh.
All right, now I can hear you again.
All right, how long was I muted for? Or
I was trying to figure this out, I guess, for the past 2 minutes or so. So just take it from after the joke, and then we should be fine.
All right. Yeah, I think it's mutes by accident. All right. So I was talking about telling jokes to learn English. What I want to talk about is why podcasting is so great to learn English. I find podcasting, like last year, I saw that a lot of my fellow comedians would create their own podcasts to market themselves, to build an audience. And I was looking at the language directory for podcasts. And a lot of my listeners listen to it actually when they're working. So when they're sitting at their table at work, obviously you can't watch a video, because if your boss walks by and sees you watching a YouTube video, you're going to probably get in trouble. But if you That's a pretty big benefit to podcasting added each day, and they really have a good stream of distribution. Like I'm heard in over 160 countries in the world. I get a lot of emails based on my podcast, and it's definitely helped me build a lot of connections. And I definitely think that podcasting and creating good content is definitely key. I think there's a lot of content right now on the internet for English learning. I believe that you have to have good content, and it's important to build your own brand, your own personality. People want to be able to relate to a person when they're learning. They want to feel part of a group or an environment. So that's what I hope I bring to them, and I hope that they laugh at my jokes. The more jokes they understand and the more they laugh, I figure it's the more that they will actually learn. All right, that's it, more or less. You guys have any questions?
Wonderful. Yeah, there definitely are. You said that the podcast, so the English Funcast podcast, is available on iTunes. Is it, do you monetize it currently? So is there a business side to it, or was it more for you? You referred during the talk, you referred to building the community. You are very strong on Facebook. Maybe also on Twitter, and is the community aspect, at least at this stage in the project, more important than the product, aside from that you said it's obviously key to provide good content?
All right, so what I did was, I think for the first 8 months, the podcast is free. It'll always be free. I actually have two podcasts. One podcast, it's English Funcast, Laugh and Learn. That's the one where I teach English for jokes. The other one is English Funcast, Learn English Slang, and that's where I teach English slang, also for jokes. And so what I did with that is I helped build a community listenership. I have a website. It's called EnglishFuncast.com. I have a forum there and an email list. 2 months ago, I launched my own private membership site. It's called English Funcast University or Institute. And that's a monthly subscription where if my listeners do want to learn English more based on my personality and my jokes, they can subscribe there for a monthly membership. And that's going pretty well. I think right now, the way it's going with like the ed tech, like language learning systems, there's so many ways to learn a language. Like you really don't have to pay to learn English because there's so much stuff. But the reason people would pay is because they want to build confidence, they want to be confident in the system or an individual. So I guess the people who pay for my online courses, they do that because they enjoy me as a teacher, they listen to the podcast for free. Either they want to give back to the podcast, or they just want to get more lessons from me because they can relate to me, right? Not everyone can relate to me or might enjoy my teaching style, but there's many who do, and they enjoy, participating in this membership site and getting lessons from me from week to week base.
Again, a question about time for Ronan as well. And how much time do you spend, say, per week, asks Benjamin on Twitter, creating the podcasts?
I actually spent quite some time, probably, I think I spend maybe 2 to 3 hours a week, at least, for the podcast. I write the podcast, I search jokes on the internet, I record it, I have to edit it and produce it. And then I've also my online English Funcast Institute. That's my membership site where I send my students 4 lessons each week. That takes a lot of time. That's also probably maybe at least 4 or 5 hours a week in preparation and recording.
All right. Amina also via Twitter asks, or she states that jokes are culturally sensitive. How can we use them in EFL classes, taking into consideration that students may not understand them, or I would add, have the same cultural basis?
All right, so for my jokes, I'm pretty clean. I don't do any real sexual jokes. I don't really swear. I don't do really any religious jokes, so most of my jokes are universal, they're mostly for all topics. So I think that's all right. If the jokes are hard and you don't understand the joke, that's good because it means you have to learn the joke. So hopefully I'll be able to explain it in a way that you can understand it, or you can read it over and over again till you'll get it, which is good. Understand the language and the joke, your reward is you get a laugh.
All right. LLTCon, anything coming up? If not, I take the next one from my stream here. And Benjamin needs to clarify or needs to know 4 hours a week in actually recording the podcast and then
jokes that I think that have parts of the English language that most language learners might not understand. So I analyze the jokes and then I write my explanations for the jokes. So probably most of the time in creating the podcast would actually be finding the jokes and editing it.
Mm-hmm. Shiv, some more questions?
Yes. What level are your podcasts aimed at? Are they for advanced students or B1, B2s?
I'd say they're probably intermediate to advanced. It's definitely not for the beginner. If you speak, I guess some of them could be for beginners, but probably for intermediate and advanced.
Mm-hmm. And Kai via Twitter just wants to clarify on the business model. As you said, the podcast is free, will always be free. And then you said the English Funcast University or Institute is subscription-based. So people, for the 4 lessons you provide them with every week, they pay X amount, I guess.
Yeah, so it's what it is, membership site. So you have access to a membership site where each week they get an email where they can log in and have access to 4 different lessons. The 4 different lessons I use to teach are English news, and that's actually, it's fake news. I don't put real news articles. I put fake news articles that are pretty humorous and hilarious. So I read it and explain it to them. I have English music, where I'll teach English through music, similar to what Jason does, where I'd teach them about different bands and songs, and I'll explain some of the lyrics, or have them read the lyrics. And it also consists through English conversation. The conversation topics that I have in the Institute, they're real conversations. They're more arguments. Like, you know, when you go to a store and there's customer service and someone complains about something and they get a huge fight. So my conversations are pretty much argument conversations that I teach, because you get a lot of that in real life. And then it's also, the last lesson would be English idioms with modern slang.
The questions keep coming in, so many questions for Ronen actually. Elena via Twitter as well. Ronen, are you willing maybe to categorize the jokes in different levels?
No. Probably not. I think it'd be too difficult. I think if you don't understand it, if you really don't understand the jokes, if you have a lower level of English, don't be scared. Just keep on listening to it. And I think if you're a beginning learner, if you're like a beginner as a learner and you pursue something that's a lot more difficult, when you do actually achieve it and understand it, you'll see greater achievement in your English language level than just continuing to do something at a beginner level. Mm-hmm. You know, like I myself, I use podcasts to study Chinese. So I study Mandarin. I'm a Mandarin learner. And a great podcast, it's called Pop-Up Chinese. And they actually, I think they categorize their podcasts based on different levels. And at the beginning, I was just listening to their beginner podcast, and I found it fairly easy, or I wasn't learning as much. So I decided to just listen to their more advanced podcast. And it was a lot harder for me, a lot more difficult, but I definitely found I was learning a lot more.
I think Elena is trying to figure out whether English Fancast is something for her. She says, once again, the question you answered or you touched on already. So what's the standard level? What do I need? Do I need to be advanced already in English?
Just listen to it. And I think everyone would figure out to themselves. I don't think, I'm not sure if my podcast is for everyone. I think if you listen to it, you'll find out. If it's a more difficult level, you can try to listen to it, but it's based mostly on the individual.
All right, so I would say if you, Shiv, have another question to finish the session off with, otherwise we tweet out our survey. So we hope you liked this session with our participants and sort of getting introduced to some of the more innovative approaches to learning and teaching English as a second language. But Shiv, maybe you have a closing question or statement to make.
Yes, very last question. So you mentioned you're learning Chinese Mandarin versus podcasts, using podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use a teacher or native speakers to practice with at all, or are you 100% able to do it from podcasts?
I think podcasts helps a lot to learn auditory. You definitely have to practice your English speaking. I've been using a couple of sites. I like Busu a lot. I use Busu a lot to practice my Mandarin. And I recently discovered another website, I think it's called Verbling. Verbling, it's really good, where it actually uses Google Hangouts, and you can actually make friends in China and practice speaking with them. I think it's essential. If you want to learn a language, I think podcasting is great. It's great to listen, but you definitely also need to interact and talk to actually practice what you learn with individuals. So you also need to use means of communication somehow.
Yeah, and that's actually almost the perfect transition to our next roundtable or panel discussion, as this is about the benefits of having a community and the benefits of peer learning. And we have the education director of Busu as one of the panelists. So in just, we are going to start in 10 minutes about from now. So everybody interested, keep on watching the live broadcast and keep the questions coming in over Twitter or YouTube comments or Facebook comments. So thank you, Ronen. Thank you so much for introducing our audience to English Funcast and the benefits or the advantages of podcasting in combination with jokes and funny things.
All right, thanks a lot for having me here.
I definitely enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Right.